In 2018, Shohei Ohtani, a 23-year-old two-way star from Japan, would burst onto the scene as a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent. Ever since then, Shohei has become one of the biggest attractions in the game, gassing 100 miles an hour on the mound and destroying the baseball at 100 miles an hour exit velocity. But even with that frontline talent in LA, led by two of the biggest transcendent talents, the Angels have failed to succeed every single year. And recently, one of their stars, Shohei Ohtani, made his frustration noticeable with his verbal desires to play for a winner and compete for a title every year. This makes it a little interesting because after the 2023 season, Shohei Ohtani will be a pending free agent, making him one of the hottest commodities on the market, as originally advertised by the GM who is responsible for signing him in 2017, who Shohei Ohtani still has an extremely strong relationship to this day. Andrew, who is that GM?
Billy Epler.
And who does Billy Epler work for?
The New York Metropolitans.
That is very interesting. So here it is, hot off the press. 3 potential trade packages for the Mets to land Shohei Ohtani.
On 3-2, Vader. Swings and misses, strike 3. He struck him out. 5 Met pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
So this is where our GM Rhino takes the stage here. And just like last time with our trade packages for Juan Soto, we are letting you guys know that these are just mock trades. They're not going to happen. We don't think they're going to happen. We're just here for speculation.
The guy, a generational talent, it's going to cost a lot. 3 different packages. I have one, including our main trade chip, which people are going to be upset with. And then I have part 2 of keeping that guy. And then I have a little fantasy land trade, which could happen. But again, I could see it in one alternate universe in the Metsverse where it could happen. Trading for Shohei Ohtani is going to be expensive, and you're going to see it right now.
Now, before we get this started, I want to ask you the question. You know that anybody that does trade for him is going to try and extend him. We don't know if he's going to try and hit the free agent market. He should, considering his value. But what is the main thing that you would do this offseason? Would you actually do a trade like this? Or would you wait for him to hit free agency?
Again, you see generational talents. They don't come on the market every day. I mean, we've been blessed that as baseball fans, hey, Juan Soto got traded at the deadline. Now potentially Shohei Ohtani. This doesn't happen every year. Yes, the Mets are not in the greatest position to make trades because obviously they're trying to rebuild their farm system. Trading for Shohei Ohtani is going to cost a ton of prospect capital plus big league talent, because I think there will be some young big league talent going the other way as well. And this team is already flawed to begin with. And now you're going to take out most of your prospect minor league capital plus young talent. I think it would be smart for the Mets to just wait the year out. And maybe, because I do not think he signs an extension unless he goes to a team like the Dodgers. But again, I think the best way the Mets could handle this is just wait the year. But you're going to waste another year of Max Scherzer. We don't know if Jacob deGrom will be here. You don't know what Starling Marte is going to look like at the end of this year. Obviously, Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil, another year closer to free agency if they're not extended. So can the Mets wait? I think that's the smart thing to do. But will that roster look completely different when he's a free agent next year? That's to be determined.
And that's definitely something you have to keep in mind of the 2 to 3 year time frame. And I think we all have that at the top of our mind with every single offseason move and every single video that we're going to make going into this offseason all the way to spring training. But yet again, this is a guy who can pitch every 5 days and hit for the rest of those days. This is a lot of value. He's 28 years old. This is a player that comes in once in a generation. You may see some guys try to be two-way players, but you haven't seen this guy do both at this incredible level. So it's going to take a big trade package if you are going to go all in for Shohei Ohtani. And let's hear the first one.
Let us start with the Francisco Alvarez inclusion. The number 1 prospect overall in baseball. Obviously, the New York Mets are just acquiring Shohei Ohtani in his 1 year at $20 million. The LA Angels are acquiring the number 1 overall prospect, Francisco Alvarez, number 7 overall prospect, Mark Vientos, number 9 overall prospect, Calvin Ziegler, number 10 overall prospect, Matt Allen, Major League Arms, David Peterson, and Tyler McGill. This is also the pitching side. Obviously, what has been the LA Angels' biggest problem? They cannot develop pitching. They have no pitching depth. In this trade, you're getting two major league arms, and then you get Matt Allen, who, has this crazy upside. Will he ever pitch in minor league baseball? Who knows? But he's so valuable, according to this fan base. Calvin Ziegler, who I think will be a very good major league reliever. Mark Vientos, obviously another guy we saw being a potential DH third base option. The Angels really don't have much offensive talent. Yes, Anthony Rendon is the albatross at third base. Potentially Vientos just playing every day at third base, or maybe even first base, because they do have for Jared Walsh, I believe, there. Who knows the long-term ramifications for Jared Walsh at first. And then obviously the gem of this trade is obviously Francisco Alvarez. I could hear some people saying, hey, they went out and got Logan O'Hoppe at the trade deadline for Noah Syndergaard, who was a top catching prospect from the Philadelphia Phillies. But Alvarez, again, is a cream of the crop guy. And Logan O'Hoppe does have a little bit of positional flexibility. He can play the outfield as well. I believe third base. Obviously, Alvarez can just be a DH, your catcher. Maybe down the line you could move him to first base. The Angels aren't going to get ample value for Shohei Ohtani because you're never going to get the exact value. But high-end pitching prospects and obviously some big league arms to throw in their rotation now, two for the future, and then two high upside bats that you can add to the lineup in a rebuilding core.
This trade looks like one of those trades where you're trying to build somewhat of the potential talent of Shohei Ohtani, where you have these DH types of bats with unlimited power in Francisco Alvarez and Mark Vientos. And then you're also bringing in crafty, very versatile pitchers. I think one of the main focuses of this trade is obviously Francisco Alvarez. With the graveyard that we have that has come up for these last 10, 15 years with this team at the catcher position, he seemed like the guy that was finally going to end that as a generational type of prospect, being number one overall in the MLB. The main thing is, you also have a man named Kevin Parada, who you can't trade right now. But I do think if you make a blockbuster deal like this for a Shohei Ohtani, one of the biggest considerations for a generational talent has to be what is going to be the future of Kevin Parada. Do you see him as a future piece to be your catcher? Do they more see him as playing a different position or something like that? So they want to hold on to Alvarez? I think Kevin Parada is one of the factors for giving up a Francisco Alvarez. No one is really comparing the talent of Francisco Alvarez and Kevin Parada, but you obviously have to have a backup plan here if you're getting rid of Francisco Alvarez.
It's not a guarantee because prospects are always never a guarantee, but it's also good to have backup plans. I'm not saying Alvarez needs to trade. I would love to see Francisco Alvarez long-term in New York, but it does have a nice backup plan, and potentially we do have Kevin Parada behind him.
Making a trade for someone should not really factor in if you have another option unless you have unlimited options like that. The reason why I do bring up Kevin Parada is because people don't know this, but Parada's older than Francisco Alvarez, which is actually pretty crazy to think about. Obviously, with an ETA of 2024, 2025, now, obviously, we all know that Parada could be an outfielder. He could be an infielder because he is such a versatile athlete. But I think that is definitely going to be one of the main factors as to if or if not trading Alvarez in any of these blockbuster trades. Now, taking off the main piece of Alvarez, what would a trade look like without him?
Francisco Alvarez being kept, the next big centerpiece to a trade, it has to be Brett Baty, the number 2 overall prospect, as well as Alexander Ramirez, the number 4 overall. Then we have Ronnie Mauricio, who has slowly declined, but Ronnie Mauricio, the number 6 overall prospect. Matt Allen, you're going to see this dude is expendable, and I will trade this man any possible way. And then Tyler McGill and Calvin Ziegler stay attached are 2 high upside guaranteed bats, in my opinion, Ram and Beatty. You get a huge question mark, in my opinion, Ronnie Mauricio. He can be either very good or he's going to be out of baseball in 2 years. Like it's kind of a boom or bust, in my opinion, with Ronnie. Yeah, with Allen, Ziegler, and McGill, they get pitching depth, which they desperately need, and they get 3 position players that they can build around.
It is a tough task and a very hesitant task to see Alex Ramirez in one of these trades. He is definitely my favorite prospect out of everyone. If we're just talking pure offense and pure position player, that has another impact as to what the Mets do long-term with their outfield, including that one free agent named Brandon Nimmo. Maybe that has something to do with it, or maybe they go quantity over quality in free agency if they were to trade for Shohei Ohtani and send Alex Ramirez that way. It's tough to make that assumption, mainly because Alex Ramirez is so young and we don't know what his future is with this team just yet. We haven't really gotten that much of a framework yet. He hasn't played past high A yet. Now, here's one question that I do have with this trade. Is there any way, because we all know that the Angels want arms. We know that the Angels have a desperate need of pitching. They've had it for a while. Is there any chance that you could possibly one of these position player prospects and add maybe 2 pitching prospects along with it? Would you do that?
It's an idea because obviously, like, again, the upside of Alex Ramirez and Beatty, one of those 2 have to be in this deal as the centerpiece. It would be, just depends how the Angels review it. Beatty has a higher floor. Ceiling isn't like, oh, this generational. Alex Ramirez, I said in our prospect video, has the upside and potential to be a Ronald Acuna. It would just be, what does the Angels GM value? Is it the ungodly potential of Ramirez compared to the high floor, pretty solid ceiling of Brett Beatty? The problem with the Mets is they are very thin on pitching prospects. Most of them, like we've said in other videos, probably going to turn out to be relievers. They don't really have that, guaranteed like starters. You don't really have many arms that are valuable. Again, that's why David Peterson would probably come back up. And McGill are kind of like those 2 guys you could say, oh, those guys could be starters in the big leagues. And then you got a bunch of question marks with guys like Vassell, guys like Ziegler, guys like Udo. You don't got starters. You really have high upside relievers. And then Allen, which, again, is on his island by himself. So
now what about replacing one of those prospects in there for major league ready guys? Because, there is one catcher, right, who was an all-star in 2019. Lots and lots of value. He's a very nice guy. What would that do?
Nothing. I mean, if we said a catcher, if he was a first baseman, now we're talking. We said him as a catcher. He's not that good as a catcher.
Well, it was worth a shot. God fucking damn it. Well, we all know that the James McCann contract is pretty stupid, so let's get even stupider. Give me your dream trade of stupidity. I want to hear the biggest pieces of stupidity that you can get roasted on in the comments section.
All right, here we go, dumbass. You guys ready for your Twitter fingers? I'm ready to see it in the comment section. The Angels have a couple contracts that are god awful. One's given to a guy who's always injured, and another guy who's pretty much now in his point of his career, he's always injured. So why not let's take one of those contracts on to not lower the cost, because we're going to take the guy that actually has some talent. So let's do it. The New York Mets acquire Shohei Ohtani and 8 years at $35.45 million a season. Michael Trout was a no-trade clause, a full no-trade, so he can veto this. But I would expect he would want to go back to his Northeast home 2 hours from his beautiful hometown of Melville/Vineland, New Jersey, to come across town, come to the Northeast. But the Mets are literally giving them their whole farm system, pretty much. Alvarez, Beatty, Mauricio, Ramirez, David Peterson, Tyler McGill, Matt Allen. You could attach a contract, a bad contract, if you want, because the Angels are paying a shit ton of money. Why would they do this? The Angels are going up for sale. Artie Moreno is finally selling that organization. Thank God for the baseball ones. Angels fans rejoice. Would the new ownership want to come into an organization where the books are pretty much clean? They moved the Razel Iglesias contract to the trade deadline. This Mike Trout contract is an abomination. If you take away the talent of the player of Mike Trout, which at Mike Trout's age at almost now he's over 30, you're starting to see the injury bug tap on. 2 teams, maybe 3, that would be willing to take on that contract, and Trout would want to go to the LA Dodgers, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the New York Mets. I don't think the Yankees are in this conversation. But Trout would want to go home. He said he's wanted to come back to the Northeast. He would prefer it to be the Phillies. But I don't believe the Phillies would be able to acquire having Harper and Trout money on the books. Where the Mets, obviously, we've said it in how many videos, long term, the books are clean, just as Francisco Lindor's name. And you would get Trout out of a losing organization, which, it is an upgrade. You would pretty much shift the LA Angels 2 superstars to the Mets. The Mets were to give up their entire farm system to build around Mike Trout, Francisco Lindor, and Shohei Ohtani. The other question is, what do you do with Ohtani's contract after next season? You give him, you hope Scherzer maybe opts out. You shift the money from Scherzer to Ohtani, and that's your big 3 going forward. Ohtani, Trout, Lindor, and that's your 3 long-term contracts.
Now let's add to the fun. Let's put a lot more gasoline on the fire, because why not? We talk about value. Guys who can play every day. Guys who can play multiple positions, guys who can do pretty much everything. I know a guy that can play multiple positions. If you were to put Jeff McNeil in this trade, who would you take out and how would it even out? Go ahead.
We're spitballing. I mean, you could potentially keep Francisco Alvarez. That isn't a terrible, you could one of Beatty or Alvarez. If you put McNeil in this trade, you could keep one of those guys. And in my opinion, I'd rather have one of those 2 guys than a 30-year-old second base.
Listen, that just means Trey Turner's coming. That's what that that
Yeah,
means.
you could open up Trey Turner. You know what? We're in fantasy land, boys and girls.
There is absolutely no guarantees as to if this is going to happen. There's connections with Billy Epler and Shohei Ohtani and the Angels. It's cool to think about. Not guaranteed, but hey, the Mets broke our hearts way too early in the playoffs. We need some stuff to do.
We are a fun organization. This is a rhino and a nerd. You're listening to a rhinoceros talk to you right now and a nerd about a baseball team on the internet. If you're going to get that butthurt in the comments, maybe I think you need to do yourself a favor. Take a shower, look yourself in the mirror, and rethink about your life.
Pick up your toaster.